Hi YouTube, my name is Yusuf and I'm making or remaking a weather video that I accidentally deleted, but also because there are new developments going on, so I thought it was better to make a new video anyways. So in my previous video I discussed the polar vortex, and a few days ago it was actually over Siberia. So you can see it has already traveled to the other part of the northern hemisphere. This has implications for the jet stream. Let me just show you the 250 millibars, the jet stream, and go to the recent data. You can see that the jet stream has a tendency to follow the polar vortex, and now it is actually because of that it increased in amplitude, in size, and so we have a shift in both weather but also extremes in temperature. And let me show you this quickly. If I go to the temperature, and especially the temperature anomaly, so we can see that these westerlies, which would normally warm Europe, and if they were not impeded, we would actually have mild weather in the next couple of days. But as you can see, all this warm, moist air actually goes to Greenland, where it is not supposed to, creating these massive positive temperatures anomaly. This is mainly caused by the jet stream, which diverts these currents of warm air, warm Atlantic air, to the Arctic again, caused of course by the jet stream. This is, by the way, the southern stratospheric warming, which I discussed in my previous video, but as you can see it has subsided because it didn't originate in the top layers of the atmosphere. And in my previous video I did mention it, that it would probably subside, and indeed it has. It was actually localized in the 10 millibars section. This is great news because this is not really a stratospheric warming, this is rather a buildup. This, for example, is the geopotential height, which is positive at the surface. So we have a positive Arctic phase, as you can see, and this means the polar vortex is strong and is not likely to split in half or anything. There is also less chance of a stratospheric warming or a sudden stratospheric warming because current conditions are not conducive for that. But it can also always happen, of course. But right now there is some good news. The only bad news is, of course, that the polar vortex is not located entirely over the Arctic, but it is in shape. It has a good shape, a good circular shape. It is moderately strong, and so I have good hopes that it will actually regain its position over the Arctic, unless it starts to behave erratically. Let's hope this is not really the case, because we could use some mild weather, especially in winter time. Granted, winter is almost finished, but starting a cold spring, that's not always a nice thing. So the next thing that I want to include, and this is actually new in this video, first of all, a warning. There has been precipitation, lots of precipitation over California, and in my previous video I actually warned against possible earthquake risks due to the ongoing precipitation and floods that have been happening in winter, but also because it is of course long overdue, and all conditions are actually set. It is long overdue. There has been lots of rain accumulating in this part of the world, and this is not a good thing. But I think the trigger, ultimately the trigger, will be space weather conditions, and I will show you why. First of all, this solar cycle is stronger than originally forecasted. So we have lots of CMEs, not always the strongest, but there have been a lot of them. Lots of solar flares, sunspots. As you can see, this is the sunspot count. And I'm definitely confident that this solar cycle will be more intense than the previous one. Also because when I look actually You know what? Let me just show you the planetary alignments. First of all, we have these alignments. So all the planets are actually located on one side, and this happens regularly. That's because Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune and Pluto are all on one side, and they move slowly. So all these other fast-moving planets have a tendency to come back over here, and then all the planets are again on one side. And as you can see, this is, for example, today, the alignments, planetary alignments of today. There is a lot of torque that is being exerted on many planets involved. And so this has also an impact on the sun, of course. So we have this increased solar activity that is being forecasted or shown. Actually just shown, not really forecasted. So we have this increased solar activity, in my opinion, caused by these planetary alignments. The things that you should be on the lookout is, of course, solar flares, but most of all, CMEs. This, for example, was a CME on the 25th of February, just a few days ago. And as you can see, this was a rather potent one. The forecast is pretty much accurate of NOAA. And let me just show you their homepage, because we do have an ongoing geomagnetic storm level 3. And these, when you have this, this means that there's energy pouring in our system, in planet Earth. And what you should be checking are the ground-induced currents when that happens. So when you do have space weather conditions, a geomagnetic storm, a high KP index, what we should be looking for is the ground-induced currents. And if we look, for example, the recent one for today, as you can see, especially, of course, this is the region that you should be monitoring. So if you have these elevated values, especially if it goes one day, if you have a very high KP index, if you have a geomagnetic storm level 4 or even 5, this is very rare, but who knows, and you see these values going in purple over here, then you should be worried, especially if it happens during summer and if there is actually a drought going on. So there are a number of things that you should be looking after. What you can also check, these are the NASA widgets. For example, the standoff distance. This is the distance of the magnetopause when it comes actually close to geosynchronous orbit. And this is actually the case. Like here, for example, I made a small movie of the impact, and as you can see, it becomes distorted. Energy pours in into our planet, and this is how you recognize when the risk is elevated. I'm not going very deep into this subject because the last time I did, they almost blew my house. So that's a very sensitive topic. But basically, the Van Allen belts are collapsing, and even a moderate space weather condition is enough to create upheaval in our planets. That's basically the gist of it. So, yes, and another thing you should be checking is whether it is new moon or full moon. So if you have, for example, a high KP index, there is a CME or multiple CMEs. And by the way, when you look at the values, let me just show you. Yes, when you look actually at the data, at the proton count, there are a few things you should be viewing as well. And that's, for example, this red line, which is called BZ component. When this goes negative, energy goes more easily. It is aligned to conduct energy more easily, and then we have these auroral activity. So when you see a very strong negative value over here and a strong value in the black line, which is actually the strength of the magnetic field, then know that the chance of an earthquake increases. Then you have, of course, the speed of when a CME arrives, and the density. Speed being more important than density. But if both are present, if you have, for example, a CME of 800 kilometers a second or above it, and you have a very dense particle stream with an open BZ component in negative territory all the way, then you should be worried. Well, worried, you should never be worried, but have an earthquake plan and know that at that time the risk is higher, especially if it is combined with either a new moon or a full moon. And this, by the way, is the list, the calendar, celestial calendar, which I will post the link of in the description for those of you interested. So always check two things: your space weather conditions and whether it is a new moon in combination of a new moon or not. So if you have like today, for example, this is not really an issue because we are the 27th. Actually, it is. We are the 27th, and it is a full moon. Look at this. Yes, I'm not mistaken. 23. Yes. Yes. Or not. Wait, let me see. 23. Actually not. I already thought this was kind of strange. No. There was a new moon on the 20th. I was actually in the wrong year. But the next full moon is on March the 7th. So no worries about the moon phases right now. There is only it is geomagnetic storm level 3. But there you have it. This is how you monitor basically space weather. I'm not going too deep into that because there is enough explanation on the internet, on YouTube. You can always dig into that if you really want to deepen your knowledge, and I strongly recommend that you do so, especially if you live in California along the fault line. Because that fault line, I believe, spans a very big distance all the way to California. So there you have it. Always monitor your space weather conditions, but also your moon phases. And I will leave links below. And actually, you just need one link, my web links, because I basically have put every single thing you need to know in its own category. For example, space weather section has everything space weather. Then you have the solar system planets, comet and meteor monitoring, the ionosphere, neutrons, magnetosphere, magnetometers, seismic monitoring, the Yellowstone quake monitoring pages. Then you have also a link for volcanoes, the Arctic climate, geology blogs, the jet stream, Gulf Stream, tsunami alerts for after if there is an earthquake and you want to know if there is a tsunami danger, and of course weather monitoring. So you have everything that I'm using to make this video in my web links page. At this point, if you haven't done already, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any new content. And as usual, I will cite a philosophical quote before ending this video. And I do believe the last one was 77. So this time it is 78, and I see vociferation and calmness of character seldom meet in the same person. Self-explanatory. People that are prone to rage and outbursts, you won't find any calmness in these persons, and likewise a calm person is less likely to have the opposite traits of character in him or in her. This is it, people. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this helped you much. And don't forget to check, of course, your space weather conditions if you live in California or in the neighborhood. And I guess we see each other next time. Bye bye, everyone.